So I had recently made the purchase for the HD490 Pros, and after using them for the past 2 weeks, I do have some thoughts and I'd want to share my experience with you all with using these headphones. But are these headphones really worth the $400 price tag? Hopefully that question is somewhat answered by the end of this video. So my initial impressions of these headphones so far is that they're pretty solid, they're super clean and aesthetically pleasing to look at and hold. Right away I did notice that the 180-degree swivel on the ear cups is very fluid and does not require any force at all to get them moving. And I was pointing this feature out since I do really believe that this does add to the overall comfort and ergonomics to the design of the headphones, which to me I think is a very nice addition to have, especially for something that's going to be sitting on your head for hours at a time at that. The plasticky bits of the headphones have this almost rough or fine sandpapery kind of texture to it. Though of course nothing I would think is too extreme or poor quality, I just found it to be slightly different than the smoother texture of something like biodynamic headphones, for example. Other than that, I don't see anything worth too much concern with the feel of them. For both sets of the ear cups, they do seem to be of higher quality, especially the black velour producer pads that come pre-installed on the headphones themselves. These pads do remind me of what you'd find on any typical biodynamic headphone, and as for the mixing pads, they are just a rougher, almost scratchier feeling set of pads, and these I do have a few complaints with, but more on this later. The cable is also pretty standard and nice quality. I don't have any issues with it at all. It's nice to see that it is balanced right out of the box though. So I wanted to jump right into talking about the comfort and feel overall with the build quality of these headphones when using them, since this does seem to be the #1 thing that is frequently mentioned of these headphones. And I will just say that these are probably the most quote-unquote comfortable headphones that I have worn personally, and coming from the lemon squeezers that are the DT900s that I have been using, these are much nicer and just simply better to wear, especially when it comes to gaming. Again, most of my subjective comfort is with the producer pads that come on the headphones already, which are the velour padding, and those are very nice to wear and I don't have any issues with these whatsoever. However, I will say that when it comes to the mixing pads, I could not stand the hot and scratchy feeling of those pads on my face for more than 30 minutes at a time. Even though I initially did not seem to have any issues with the mixing pads on my face, they just started getting really hot and again scratchy, and it just feels like you want to rip your skin off. And yeah, for me personally, I just couldn't see myself wearing them for more than 30 minutes at a time. And I do say comfort lightly because I believe that comfort is not only subjective to each individual person, but I just don't necessarily relate headphones and comfort in the sense that they feel good to wear. Like, I perceive the comfort with headphones as either they are so uncomfortable to wear that you notice just how shitty and terrible they are ergonomically, or they are so in fact comfortable that you don't really mind them being on your head and you could wear them for many hours at a time. But moving on, the headband is nice along with the slide adjustments being smooth, which I don't see any problems with these either. And yeah, overall, the HD490 Pros I'd say are pretty comfortable and the overall build quality seems nice enough. Now as for the sound from these headphones is where I start to have some of my complaints. I mainly used the producer pads since I found those to be the better of the two pads that were included with the headphones themselves. But I did have some issues that could simply not be remedied by either of the mixing or producing pads, and thus leading me to simply just not like the sound of these headphones. For starters, the bass on these headphones with the producer pads was punchy and seemed to extend pretty low. The sub bass was also very noticeable, and for music this sounded pretty nice overall. However, with the bass on the mixing pads seemed pretty tame, so obviously a lot of the impact and deeper rumble was gone when using those. The mids I guess were typical Sennheiser, which was pretty okay. Not really sure if I have any issues with the mids, as both of the pads sounded pretty similar when it came to the mids of course. However, for the treble, again very similar sound from both of the pads, but when it came to the bass from the producer pads, it seemed that the treble was a bit veiled, and even more so than the mixing pads, and for music it didn't really seem like such of a big deal because a lot of the sound was very smooth and cohesive, but for gaming I did not like the veiled sound whatsoever. So again, for gaming I mainly stuck with the producer pads, and I just still did not enjoy the sound from these headphones at all. Right away I noticed that everything sounded like it was pushed further back. I did not get this wide soundstage that a lot of reviews would suggest, and to me they just sounded very muted and flat, which again some people may find enjoyable to their ears. And I know that obviously these are a more neutral sounding analytical headphones, so there's not really going to be a lot of sound from the treble and bass, which is again more seen in V-shaped sounding headphones, but still, the thing I disliked the most was the excessive amount of bass from the producer pads, especially for games like Battlefield. Everything sounded super muddy and the bass just drowns out anything important that you'd need to hear from the mids and treble, which to me was quite a bummer. Of course, I could have just just switch to the mixing pads to fix this issue, but you might as well be wearing a scratching post on your head that will skin you alive while you use them. But indeed, not even the mixing pads would have fixed the lack of clarity or detail that came from the sound signature overall, which again to me was just kind of a letdown, since I really do enjoy the feel and fit of them on my head for gaming. Now I do know that these are using the same angled drivers that can be found in the HD560s, and to me I'd still say that these sounded a lot closer to something I would enjoy in terms of sound versus those. This could perhaps be due to the better housing and overall build of the drivers themselves, especially with the overall structure with the 490s, but again, I would say that they are missing a lot of what I'd want from a pair of headphones and just simply are not the sound profile for me. With the sound, I feel it's also something I believe EQing just simply would not fix for me personally. Overall, I would still say that the comfort is still a 9 out of 10 and the sound for me would be a 5 out of 10. And I have used the HD650s and the HD560Ss, and I would say that the HD490 Pros are still the better sounding Sennheisers to me, but I still can't quite agree with the sound personally. So would I consider these worth the $400 price tag that they are charging? And no, not really, unless of course you maybe want a nicer feeling pair of HD560s, but again, the sound to me is just alright and not anything I would consider crazy worth the $400 price tag.